Hi, everyone.
Hey, Claire.
Claire.
Things are going pretty well from my house. Speech therapy over distance learning seems to be working as a whole, so I'm happy with that.
Okay. Good. And how about Viva?
Oh, Viva's here. She's good.
I'm well.
Well, I'm glad you're well. It's nice to see you. Oh, look.
What?
Wait, isn't that your classmate?
Where?
What, was that Nathan? Aren't Viva and Nathan in the same class?
No.
Anna?
Anna's class?
William. William
Oh,
is
William,
in
I'm
our
sorry.
class. No, don't worry.
William.
Oh, William. You know William. Will, right?
Yeah.
Is he helpful or is he a pain in the butt?
She told me she likes Will a lot.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what's your name?
I'm Viva, and I'm 6 years old.
Cool. I'll have
I'm
to
gonna
ask.
put you. I add you to my name here, Paige and Viva.
Well, don't leave me out.
Viva. Oh, and here comes Paul.
I'll ask Will about you later.
What about the uppercase letters?
Oh man, it just takes time.
Come on, Mom.
There
There you go.
Agent Viva Paul.
Oops, and Paul.
Hi, Saeed. Oh, where's this? Okay, so you know what? We're just gonna wait like 1 more minute and then we'll get started with just some general announcements. And then we have Erin Walsh with us tonight. And hi, Carrie. Are you riding the storm out, Carrie?
The storm seems to have passed us by, so I didn't
Good.
get caught in a riptide or anything bad, so that's good.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm glad you're safe.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah. Sarah, can you just let me know if you need Saeed to interpret? Because I will slow my roll. Where did she go?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes.
How are you?
Good.
I'm glad you're joining us.
Hi.
Do you need
Hello.
Saeed to interpret?
No, please. I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank
Okay, if I go too fast, or if you need something, say something, okay?
Okay, fine. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. All right, we will get started. Let's see. Christian or Jim, do you have some announcements that you want to start with?
Yeah. I'd be happy to start with just a couple announcements from PTA, just to be quick so I don't take up too much time. First off, I'm Christian Novak. I'm chair of the PTA for Seward Montessori. Just a couple things that I want to touch base on. And one is We have a granting program that we provide for students and teachers at the school every year, and our granting program we've decided to extend throughout the year to make sure that we are covering any needs for teachers and for faculty and staff and for students for that matter. To make sure that we can be as strong as possible with distance learning. So we've already been providing headphones to students. We are looking at potentially making sure that we get cameras to certain teachers, cameras and presentation boards, so that they can do classes the way that make it easier for them to do Montessori classes. In terms of that, we do have funds set aside for that, and know that we're also always looking for donations. As a PTA, in a week is going to be Give to the Max Day, and we are participating. And I would invite you all to support the PTA so we can continue to provide continue to provide tools and opportunities to the teachers to enhance their curriculum. A couple other things is that I just want to touch base on too is that every year we put together some, we love calling it Seward swag. So you can get t-shirts, sweatshirts. I know that we're creating gaiters and potentially face masks this year. So as soon as we get that up and running, I'll make sure to put out the website, and we'll have a specific order by date. And then actually and stickers. Thank you, Carrie, and stickers. And there's a slew of us PTA folks that are willing to deliver to your mailbox door if necessary. So we will be putting that up live. And other than that, I feel like there was one thing and I'm missing, and it's okay. I mean, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Oh, I know. This year is weird, and because of that, a lot of our events have been canceled for the PTA. And one thing that we are going to push forward on is our Seward read around.
Okay.
And we're not entirely sure exactly how that's going to look, but I know that we're going to hold something still in February, and we're going to try to get all of your kids to sit down with a book every day for 10 to 15 minutes. And yeah, that's still so important to us. So thank you all so much for your participation. And Jim, if there's anything else you want to add, otherwise I'll hand it back over to Tammy then too.
Thanks, Christian. Again, this is Jim Moore, co-chair with Tammy of the Site Council. And the only announcement I have to say is we are still scheduling our first meeting of the year. We're trying to get a bit more diverse participation and still working on that. So please hang in there, and we'll send out an announcement as soon as we can. That's it.
All right, thank you. So I just want to, along the lines of the read around and making sure our kids are reading, our amazing new media specialist has figured out a way to get books into the hands of kids and do some book checkout for all the kids. So you will be hearing about that very soon. She's organized it, and Allie's going to help. And we are really, really excited about this opportunity for kids to check books out, check them back in, get some more books. Claire, anything?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're gonna start with, I think, E2 in middle school. And then we'll kind of slowly add in more once we get going, but we want to kind of start with a smaller group at first.
Yeah, see how it goes. So hats off to her, working really hard on that. And like I said, we are really excited about that. So that'll help as well. And I will, tomorrow, my greeting, I'll let teachers know that we are going forward with the read around, and so they can get that on their calendars and offer to help as well. And I see in the chat that Kelly already offered to help out. So that's super exciting. Thank you. Other things, just updates on the comprehensive design and what's going on for all of you and our kids. The board did vote on the new start time as 9:30. I feel bad about the information I presented to you in October, but as I knew it, we were a 7:30 start. And like I said, you all put that out on your PTA Facebook page, and Carrie came and told me. And I did reach out to folks at the district level and ask them to reconsider. But I also understand that, transportation is a really big deal in our district, and moving kids around. And, I think by the time I asked, things had been settled, and to move us would have caused quite a domino effect. I think we're one of the biggest programs in the district. We have, as we sit today, we have 13 to 14 buses who come to Seward every day. Next year, they plan on us having 17 buses who come to Seward every day. So you can imagine trying to figure that out kind of at the last minute. But I apologize that I gave you inaccurate information. That was not my intent, number one. And number two, here we are again with a decision that wasn't it kind of vetted with our community. So I feel bad about that, but I hope you also all understand the district thinks really big picture, that 30,000 foot view. So we'll move forward with that. One thing you should know coming up in the next couple of weeks is all parents, all Minneapolis public school parents, including us, you will get a letter from the district saying, this is your assigned school. Most of you will have, for the elementary kids, it'll be Seward. If you have a middle school student, you will be assigned according to the middle school in your area. And so what I know is some of our kids are assigned at Sanford, a handful. Most of our kids are assigned at Anderson. And then we have some kids assigned at Northeast Middle School. So, and again, it depends upon where you live. So what you'll get is you'll get a card or a letter or something in the mail stating this is your assigned school. And then it will also give you options. If you don't want to go to this school, here are your options. Here are the steps you need to take. All right. And just so you know, we will be following up and getting information, and we'll put it on our website, and we'll get lots of information out to you about your options. Okay.
I'll add, Tammy, too, that if they are okay with whatever the sheet says or whatever the neighborhood school is. You don't have to do anything. Where you'll have to do something is if you are wanting to open enroll or choose a magnet option.
And after these letters go out, sometime in December, just know that we will be surveying all current Seward elementary parents and just to confirm you want us to save a seat for you at Seward, and given our start time, this is what it is. So we will be surveying and finding out how many people will be staying, and then we'll be able to better plan for incoming students to Seward.
Couple of questions in the chat, Tammy.
Oh yeah,
Is there
sorry.
after school with the later start, or is there before school?
Yeah, so thank you for noticing the chat, Claire. Yes, there will be a before school program and hopefully an after school program. Right now, I reached out to Rec Plus at the park, and Scott and I are in conversation about the before school program, and there will be an after school program. And I still have to work with community ed on any of our other offerings.
And then the other questions about sibling preference.
Yes, there is sibling. Yep,
Yeah,
there's
and I'll
sibling.
try to find, there's a whole preference or how they are ordering it on the Minneapolis website. I'll try to find that and put it in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, there's sibling preference. Good questions. Any other questions? Okay, I felt like I was going to add one more thing about this. Oh, just so you know, the district, I'm going to talk about COVID now. The district is saying we're going to remain in phase 2, which is distance learning. We're not moving forward given the numbers. All right. I can let you know that that lots of people have been out working on the ventilation system, which, you know, Jim, you and I have talked about being a really important part to keeping people safe if and when we get back to school. So we've upgraded filters. They're having the air run 2 hours longer during the day. We've installed hand sanitizer stations. I think there are 4 of them on first floor and more are coming. They've delivered, you know, little round things that we can stick on the floor to help us stay 6 feet apart. So, so just know that there are things going on and taking place for the future. But as of right now, we're staying in distance learning, which is the right thing to do, keep everyone safe. Okay. Any questions about that? All right. And then we're going to be sending out an end of Q1 survey to all of you just to get some feedback on how you think things are going. We know, you know, I say this multiple times, like everything's right? It's hard to tailor a program in this kind of teaching and learning environment, but we definitely want your feedback. So just expect a survey to come out sometime soon so we can hear what your thoughts are and we can just partner with you even better. Okay. Oh, I can talk a little bit more about the CDD, about some things that we've talked about with the district. One thing that is really important in a Montessori program, especially when we're going to grow one, is that we start at the base, right? It's really tricky for older students to come in and really adapt to the Montessori. And so we've talked a lot about we've requested another high five program, and we've requested another kindergarten program. And we've also requested a 6th grade, because if we're going to do Montessori with fidelity, we need to keep our 6th graders. We have been told this year no to the 6th grade because the school board has to approve the program, and they approved a pre-K to 5. But we can go back next year and ask for that. It's much more likely that we would get another high five and a children's house. And we're working on that. And that money, high five specifically, comes from different funding. It comes from early childhood funding from the state. And so, but we're working on that. So I just want you to know, because we're going to grow this program. We're going to grow it to be really strong and really amazing. The other thing I want you to know is so last spring, I had reached out to the River Falls Montessori training program as well as St. Kate's training program, just to say to them, we're going to need teachers. So we've talked about that. We've also reached out to Augsburg College and Metro State, their urban educator program, specifically recruiting teachers of color. And I've heard from people at Augsburg, and we've got a plan to network and work on getting some teachers over for practicums and possibly student teaching. I haven't heard back from Metro State, but I will. I'll get to them. All right. Do you have any questions about that?
Is there anything that parents can do to help support the full E2 with the 6th grade? That's a great idea. It would be like the one good thing to come out of this, it feels like.
Yeah, you know what? Yes. So let's, what I want to do is we're just going to keep asking for it, and then we'll write a proposal and we'll get parent input and support behind it. And it makes sense. And I think given the numbers or whatever, and we even talked to them about like 6th grade transition to 7th grade, what that looks like for numbers for our middle schools. And we all are really confident it can be done, just not this year. So thank you. You will be hearing from us about that. All right. And just lastly, before we turn this over to Erin, and Erin, you couldn't be talking to us at a better time. I'm super grateful that you are part of our community and that you also offer up your expertise on brain development, stress, anxiety, technology, all of it. I just want to say, I was lucky enough, or I have been lucky enough to be in a number of teachers' classrooms, online classrooms, and watching what's going on. And I was, and then, you know, I'm in school and there aren't very many teachers and obviously no kids, and it's kind of lonely. And I have Claire, right? And, but I was just really missing the kids the other day. But I was thinking, it really is nothing short of a miracle what is going on online with the kids. I mean, they are all showing up. You are all present. It is incredible. When I'm sitting in a kindergarten class and there are 23 kids on a computer for a half-hour morning meeting, what is that, right? It is just a testament to you and your children for sticking with us. I know Christine, we had a staff meeting today and Christine was saying how persistent our parents are when there are technology problems and people are coming in or calling her. Everyone's been so kind and supportive and just sticking with it until they understand what's going on. And that is, again, another thing that I think makes the Seward learning community so incredibly special, that we just never give up and we want to get it right, and we're supporting each other through all of it. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for sticking with us, because I absolutely know it's not easy. So thank you. Oh, Helen, did this request to delay the CDD? They're not going to delay the CDD. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Erin. Erin, welcome. We're glad to have you tonight. And thanks in advance for joining.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Hi, I'm Erin. I see a lot of familiar faces. On the meeting here, it's almost emotional. I've been doing so much. My work is to do this. So I've been joining with parents and communities of educators kind of across the country via Zoom, but it feels different to see all these faces, some of whom I know well, others who are new to me, but this is sort of my community. So I'm coming not just with my professional hat on, but my parent hat as well. And so this topic, I'm excited to just facilitate and create a space for us to talk a little bit more about stress and the brain. And I do have some slides and some things for us to look at as we sort of explore the science of stress and what that can look like and feel like, not just in us, but also in our kids. But I also know that there's a ton of expertise on this call. Not only sort of clinical expertise, I'm not a clinician, so I translate research in child development into what I hope is more easy to understand language. You can let me know after tonight. But I know that we have clinicians here with us. We also have the expertise that each of us has in our own kids, which is probably the most important expertise of all that we bring to the table as we navigate a really, really challenging time. So I'm going to dive in. Here's my thought for what might be useful. When Site Council and folks were like, hey, can you do a little thing on stress? I was like, well, it's sort of like at any point, this is going to be perfect timing, because I couldn't do it last roundtable. But I was like, I don't think the stress is going to go away. I think it's going to continue to be relevant. And so I'm going to share a little bit of the science, but I'd really love for people to use the chat or unmute their microphones and participate, add, challenge, bring solutions, bring kind of what it's actually looking like in our homes as we all partner together to do this really wild thing called crisis learning in a pandemic. And so thanks to Tammy for acknowledging the incredible work of educators. And we're doing a lot of work at home. So I'm going to, let's see, Tammy, are you hosting the meeting? Can you give me screen sharing power?
Okay,
or
Yeah,
whoever's
actually,
hosting, or
I think
Carrie.
Carrie, Carrie, can you give, who's hosting?
I think Christian is.
Oh, Christian, go ahead.
Christian, yeah.
Sorry.
Hold on. Hold on. All right. There you go, Aaron.
Okay, I am co-host, sick with power. Here I go. All right. All right, I'm going to share a few slides just so that we can have something to look at. But I'm going to keep up, I'm going to kind of come in and out of slides, and I'm going to keep the chat up because that's where I'd like to really make sure. Actually, can you see what's happening here? Whoop. Hold on, everybody. Something's funky. Let's try it again. There we go. Can you see anything? Are you just seeing a black screen like I am? Okay, let me try one more time. All right, so here's the question I want you to answer in the chat feature while I figure out the technology piece, which is, we're going to be talking about the many faces. Now, hopefully you can see this. We're going to be talking about the many faces of stress. Now, can we see it? Maybe? Y'all, what is happening?
Oh, that worked that time, Erin. It worked.
It did. Okay.
Yeah.
That's work.
Okay. Are we in?
Yes.
Can you see us? Okay. So here's what
There,
I'd
it's
love to
there.
start with, let's use the chat. And we all looked at the agenda. Here we are, like logging on to Zoom again. As many of us have sat alongside our children in Google Classroom, we, depending upon how our work happens, we maybe have spent a lot of time on the computer today, and we're going to be talking about stress. And so as we walk through the agenda, I think we covered CDD, start times, like we kind of went through things that a lot of us have a lot of emotions around already. And so I'd love for you to just go into the chat right now and just sort of take a snapshot of maybe where you're feeling your body right now in terms of like a self-assessment of stress. And so this is challenge by choice. You do not need to like share everything that you're experiencing right now, but maybe like a 10 is I'm in kind of total panic mode by some of the announcements or my experience of this week. Maybe 1 is like I'm, you know, laying back and I've got a beach in the background and I'm feeling really, really regulated. And so let's just get a sense of kind of, let's take a snapshot of where we are right off the bat. So go ahead and find the chat. And Ken is super, super stressed. Of sort of ongoing stress into even conversations like this, right? And so this is just, as part of this is just to normalize that there's a logistical component to sometimes the conversations that we have as a community. And then there's the body component and the feelings component that we want to be able to like look towards each other as parents and honor that in each other. And so, like I said, I'm, you know, professionally, I translate research on child and adolescent development, but personally, I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old who are navigating the incredible work that educators are doing, but, you know, layers of stress related to learning in a pandemic. And so this is just to acknowledge that I think each of us are sort of the essential workers on the front lines of the pandemic. So while we see a lot of commercials for healthcare workers, and absolutely we need to continue to support and to cheer them on, there's a lot of sort of essential workers on the front lines. And I think educators and parents are kind of right up there. And for some of us, this is kind of how we're feeling. like at this point, we're 9 months in, and we're like, where was the finish line? I feel really depleted, and I'm not quite sure how I can keep going. So if you could just again let me know in the chat, because I can't see all your faces. I can see about half of you. Just let me know if you at any point in this week have felt like these skiers, where you just have sort of felt almost like in collapse mode. Just, I'm going to go to bed. I'll see you in 2021. Or this sort of uncertainty about how to get yourself up off the snow and keep going. So just put a yes or a no in the chat, or you can unmute your mic and just shout it out if this picture resonates. And yeah, so, take a look at the chat. You're not alone. Yep, absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. Daily, nightly. Like some of us have our videos off because we might be lying on the floor right now. And so this is helpful to normalize together as a community that certainly many of the layers of stress are kind of moving into or have always been in marathon mode. That what we think of sometimes as surge capacity, so our body's ability to help us sort of confront acute crisis, was sort of depleted a long time ago. If you felt energy, adrenaline, a sense of sort of collective purpose that maybe brought some energy to bear on the challenge, maybe last spring when we first transitioned to online learning, for many of us and many of our kids, that kind of surge capacity that can give us that extra energy to confront challenge, it's harder to find it. And that's really normal as we move from a sprint into a marathon. And if you're anything like me, some days you're like, wait, I didn't sign up for this marathon. I didn't train well for it. I don't think I have the proper gear. Like, why are my children with me on this race? I was hoping to do it alone. So there's all sorts of feelings that we start to have as we move from sort of sprint mode into marathon mode. And of course, that's not to say that all the layers of stress are new. So, we could add, it's like I was listening to Karen do some lessons online about rocks. So there's all kinds of layers, like sediments that are contributing to stress right now. And some of them are not new and will not be over anytime soon, like grappling with systemic racism and disrupting racism. But the layers of the economic crisis and COVID, right? You don't need me to jump on and remind you of sort of the layers of crisis that we're all trying to navigate. So what can we do together tonight? Something that I hope is useful, and you'll have to let me know, something that's been really useful for me as a parent is to frequently revisit the science of stress, to normalize how it feels in my own body, to be able to understand how it shows up in my kids, and so that we can figure out what's the best that we can do with what we have to sort of buffer the negative impacts of stress during this time. And so that's what I'm going to do fairly quickly. And I know that there's tons of friends on the line and lots of folks that maybe have revisited this science as well. So let's just all enjoy a quick revisit or reaffirmation and a reminder of the incredible heavy lifting that our brains are doing right now. So here's the sort of very, very high level overview of how our brain helps keep us going during times like this. So, our kids are doing incredible things, whether you have I know that I saw a parent of a kindergartner, right? Whether they're learning their letter sounds or whether they're like, taking action on global issues that matter to them in middle school and everything in between. Our brains allow us to do amazing things. But our brain's very first job, above all else, is to keep us alive. And that's useful to remember because then how it's built and how it responds to things in our environment start to make a little bit more sense. Because our brain's number one job is just to keep us alive, to keep us kicking, the stress response system is the most widely distributed system in the brain. So it connects all regions of the brain so that when we feel under stress or threat, our entire brain responds by shutting down from the top down. And what I mean from the top down is kind of from our cortex, sort of our thinking brain, the outermost layer of the brain, into our feelings brain, and into our really reactive space. So when we talk about the cortex, this is a pretty important part of the brain for us and for our kids. I think last year, I know that there's some new parents, but we talked a little bit about this part of our brain and its role as the orchestra conductor in our kids' brains. So the orchestra conductor, because it's kind of managing competing impulses and procedures and memories, right? It's making sure that of all the different procedures and circuits going on in the brain, that the brain can sort of make music and move towards its goals. And so this part of the orchestra conductor does really important things like manage our working memory. So that's our ability to actually take in information from our environment. It helps us manage our impulses. So whether that impulse is I'm just going to stay in bed today, or that impulse is I'm just going to play video games in the basement all day, it's a part of our brain that helps us manage that and says, no, I'm going to go log on to my classroom instead, or I'm going to, instead of when I'm angry, sort of throwing something across the room, I'm going to say, I'm feeling scared instead, right? So this part of our brain is really useful right now, impulse control. The other part of the brain that's housed right here, the other set of skills is around creative thinking and perspective taking. So our ability to think creatively about how to approach a problem from a different perspective. It's also the part of our brain that helps us take other people's ideas into account and other people's perspective, like your parents or your teachers or your colleagues or your parenting partner. So as you can imagine, we're not going to take a deep dive, but this part of the brain, the orchestra conductor, really helps our kids in life, and it really helps them learn. So why are we revisiting this briefly is because given that the brain's job is to keep us alive and that it sort of shuts down from the top down when it's under stress, that is the part of the brain that kind of gets hijacked by the feelings brain when we're under stress. So when we're feeling calm and safe and secure and regulated with just the right amount of risk, where we don't feel totally overwhelmed, we just get a little bit of adrenaline that helps us focus, that's when we're sort of in a place of new learning and abstract thinking. And as our brain responds to stress and threat, we sort of move into concrete mode, into reactive mode, and it can be a lot of emotional fireworks as well. And so I want to hear a little bit from you about what this might look like, but this is helpful for me to remember. It's also helpful for me to remember and to share with my kids that this is part of our brain's job to keep us safe. And so this is a really normal response to hard things and to stressful things. And there's really obvious ways that we can imagine that this is useful for the brain, right? So, obvious examples, I'm walking along a hiking trail, I'm feeling great, right? And my brain is thinking about all my goals and abstract thoughts and where I want to go. And then all of a sudden, right, I hear a noise in the bushes. And it's really good that my brain is built for my limbic brain to hijack my thinking brain and to make sure that this buddy is not what's around the corner, right? It's good that I'm not sort of continuing to activate the higher order part of my brain. Instead, my adrenaline goes up, my cortisol goes up. And we're actually really, really good at handling acute stress. Our bodies do this pretty well. So that's that surge capacity, right? What we're not that good at, which is why it's helpful to revisit this topic right now, is we're not that good, or it doesn't serve us human beings very well when we greet bears that feel just sort of too big, too overwhelming. They overwhelm my capacity to handle it. Bears that don't go away. So even small stressors, but they just stay with us for long periods of time. Or if we're sort of confronting stressors and we feel like we have too little help and too little support. So too long, too much, too long, and with too little help are the things we want to watch out for as we help try to sort of protect our kids from the worst impacts of stress. And depending upon our identity and our location and what's going on, any number of those factors could be in play for our kids. And so, though I know that our kids are not great, it's like we need to get off this slide because it's stressing us all out. Here, let's go to one with more bears. Though our kids are not greeting grizzly bears on their way to the Google Classroom that they're logging into, there are plenty of stressors that they are thinking about in their mind. So worry, right? Worry is when it's a cognitive thing. We're worried about what might happen. So there's plenty of bears that our kids are anticipating. I'm worried about if somebody's going to get sick. I'm worried, what if I never go to school again, right? There's other bears that are actually sort of happening. So if somebody does get sick, if there's violence in our neighborhood, right? There's all kinds of things that kids are sort of surveying and experiencing. And there's like mini bears that just feel like maybe it's like, oh, that's not that big of a deal alone, but they feel as they accumulate and as they persist, it can get more challenging, like trying to make friends in a brand new classroom where you haven't seen them yet face to face. So here's what I'd love to hear from you in the chat. And again, this is challenge by choice. So you can be as sort of descriptive or vulnerable about what some of the bears your kids are grappling with or not. This is a community where we get to hold some of that, but also we can just take our pen and our paper and write things down as well, if we just want it for us. But I'm just curious, as you put yourself in your kids' shoes, what are some of the bears that you know their little brains are grappling with right now? And they could be big ones. They could also be what feel to us like maybe mini bears. So like remembering a password or where your specialist link is, which in the grand scheme of what's happening in the world right now doesn't seem like a huge deal, but might be really overwhelming depending upon the day. So why don't you use the chat and let's just take a moment and kind of flesh out a little bit what some of those potential stressors are in our kids' landscape. And we'll wait to see some of those come in. Don't worry, soon we'll get off bear slides so that we can actually not feel the strain. And if anybody wants to unmute your mic, you can totally do that too. We're a small group. Wait a couple minutes. Right, so that sort of a lot of uncertainty that sort of layers upon what's happening during the day. Yeah, so I think as we look at middle schoolers wanting to connect with friends, yeah, so wanting to connect with friends, but also trying to figure out how to focus, right? When you all of a sudden have 15 tabs and a phone next to you and you're trying to engage in learning. Yeah, remembering all the meet times, panicking that she may have missed things at random times. Yeah, so there's a lot of overlap in some of the bears that our kids are feeling, and probably, you know, many others that we're either thinking about in our heads or writing down as we consider kind of what our kids are navigating. And so what can be useful is to normalize and talk a little bit about, so what does that look like? We've talked a bit about the stress response. But what does that actually, how does that manifest in our kids' behavior? So how do we know if that's showing up? And I think one of the things that's been really helpful for me is to remember that some kids sort of internalize feelings of stress, and it shows up as sort of sadness, worry, and in many ways, those expressions of stress evoke empathy and they invite adults towards them. So maybe they don't say I'm stressed, but they're a little bit extra clingy, sad, and sort of our impulse is to want to go towards them and comfort them. And if you are parenting a child whose stress response looks like this, then it's not always easy. But it is something where we feel like we are moving towards each other and want to build relationship and provide comfort. But that isn't necessarily the most common face of stress. So just as common or more common is that our kids or ourselves like go into porcupine mode. And this does not evoke empathy in us adults. And oftentimes this does not invite us towards them to want to comfort them and soothe them. This is a much more common reaction to stress and can take on a ton of different sort of challenging and disorienting faces. And so just a few of those that you maybe have experienced in yourself or in your kids is that if you think about all the things that that part of our brain does for us, so if it's starting to sort of shut down a bit in the face of chronic stress, this is why you might sometimes feel like your thinking is a little slower, like we call it like fuzzy thinking. So as an adult, you might even have like 15 tabs up on your computer and you're not quite sure which one to start on. It's difficult to make choices and to sort of take in information from the environment. So like your colleague or your parenting partner tells you something and you're like, uh-huh, got it, yep. And then you walk into the other room and you're like, I barely know my name or why I'm here. So that working memory can become really clogged or, really difficult to access. So a child who maybe was organized last year, but is like late for every Google Meet and feel panicked about that. So some of that working memory stuff. So older kids, sometimes a face of stress is like humor, disengagement, not taking it seriously. And then we're like, well, this kid doesn't even believe that this is real, or and sometimes that's from a place of stress. So anger, irritability, and volatility, that's classic porcupine. This is where, again, this does not evoke empathy in us, right? So we might be comforting. We can have two kids, different temperament, different wiring, and different ways that they process stress and different experiences. And one is like coming towards us for a hug, and the other one is raging in the other room, both of whom are experiencing stress and strain. But it's really difficult for us to offer some of the support to our porcupines, right? So apathy, lethargy, so kids who might say, I just want to sleep through this, I'm exhausted all the time. Overdrive or perfectionism is another common face of stress. So I need to know every single thing that's expected of me. If I miss an assignment, I'm a mess, sort of overperforming in order to get control. And so I'm curious, again in the chat, or just unmute your mic and we can shout it out, is which of these faces of stress you're seeing in your kids, or you can note in yourself, because some of our kids might actually be doing okay, but this list might really resonate with you as the adult sort of absorbing a lot of the stress of the sort of larger systems. So let me know in the chat or just unmute. And it's going to look different at 5 than it is at 15. But let me know which of these faces of stress you're seeing.
Erin, I'm going to unmute myself and talk because I know it can be kind of lonely when you're
Yeah,
just talking.
Yes.
I'm sitting here with a 9-year-old who I'm looking at this list and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Slow, fuzzy, irritable. It's all very familiar on different moments of different days. This is really helpful and clear. And me too. It's not just the 9-year-old, it's me too.
Yeah, and I'm seeing in some of you and Katie, that you might have one kid where this really resonates, and other kids are sort of different go-to tools that kids might go to. And so, just knowing what the root of some of that is. So I see just in the chat, and anybody is welcome to be brave. You're being brave no matter what you're doing. You're just brave for like showing up on the planet and doing your thing. So we're all brave, but if you want to unmute and talk or use the chat, that's great. So irritability and disorganized thinking. Yeah, can't go to sleep. So bedtime behavior tends to be where a lot of worry can show up. So this is a place where our brains have a lot of space to anticipate. So that's really kids who might say, I'm fine all day long, then they want to sleep in our bed with us again, right? And maybe it's been 3 years since they've done that. So fuzzy, slow, and disorganized thinking. Yeah, a lot of, I really appreciate that everyone many of us are saying, you know, this really resonates with me, like as I look at my own feelings and functioning. And so I'm just looking through so many prickly behaviors showing up at our house. Yeah. And so what you'll see, what can be useful here is because stress sort of lives in our bodies before it lives in our brain. And finding words for things is a very cortex driven activity, right? So we might say, well, what's stressing you out? And they're like, I don't know, nothing, you know, or are you stressed out? No, I'm fine. But then the next minute, they're either sobbing uncontrollably or they've thrown their Chromebook against the wall. Don't worry, that hasn't happened, Tammy. But, you know, or they're, and you're like, I'm noticing in your behavior. So we have to look, when we're looking for stress, there are some kids who are talkers and have like really clear emotional granularity. And they're like, well, I'm feeling both disappointed and scared. And I'm going to need this to regulate my mood. Most of our kids are like, I'm fine. And then we see it show up in their physical behaviors or in their irritability. So I did want to note something that is also really helpful because we're in a K-8 building, that little kids oftentimes stress will manifest in somatic things. So my stomach hurts, my head hurts, or what sometimes is referred to as regressions, just sort of unmet needs, right? So things around bedtime, around the bathroom, like those kinds of things. Our older kids, like teenagers, oftentimes what it will look like is just like consistent irritability. So, and that's normal, like for our teenagers to be irritable with us as parents, that's like developmentally right on time. But when their irritability is with everything, like my teachers, my coaches, my friends, like that sometimes can be a sign that they're really overwhelmed and having a difficult time regulating their mood. So, you know, this is helpful because what I, at least what I hope my offering is that when I remember that this is how stress can show up, it helps open up the possibility for me to empathize with my porcupines, both the porcupine that is me when I am under stress, and to give myself grace and empathy, and the way that my kids might put out spines. And to make sure that if I'm parenting one who draws a lot of empathy and one who's more challenging behaviors in terms of stress, that we're watching sort of that dynamic and making sure that all of our kids were kind of thinking about how can we respond. And did somebody raise a hand? You can just feel free to go ahead and unmute, and anybody can ask questions or contributions at any time.
I have a question.
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah, I would love to hear it.
For school next year, do you have an option to go to your own school, or do you have it picked for you?
You should answer, Tammy, because that's a bear. That's like a bear right there, and I can't answer that one. Like we're all gonna go.
You'll be assigned a school, and if you want a different school, you will have an option to choose another school.
Does it have to be your district, or could you go anywhere you want?
Well, the Minneapolis Public Schools, if you're in our district now, they're going to assign you in the district. If you and your family make a choice to go somewhere else, then that's up to you. But it'll be within Minneapolis Public Schools.
This is like a great example of the kinds of questions that are really overwhelming right now, right. And can feel sort of overpowering in terms of what's next and some of the uncertainty. And I think as we think about how we can help each other with those questions too, we'll be sure to wrap up before, like we won't go right till 8 with this conversation, and make sure that we have time for those kinds of questions to make sure that we have whatever certainty we need when we're not quite sure kind of what some of the next steps are. So if that kind of at least gets through that question, I do think, so a lot of us are seeing this. We're living with porcupines, we're feeling porcupine-y. Before we talk a little bit more, and then I'll kind of come out of some slide mode and we can talk about what some of the strategies look like. But it's just, before we leave the science of stress, I do think it's useful not just for ourselves, but in terms of how we're talking to our kids, to remind ourselves that if we were to just leave the science right now, we could leave being like, oh my gosh, stress is bad, it's toxic to the brain, it hijacks the thinking brain. So our job must be to sort of get rid of as much stress as we can. And clearly we can't do that in terms of the world. There are certain stressors we have to do everything in our power to try to protect kids from, right? So there are such things as inappropriate stress, things like racism, things like bullying, things like, right, there's no like getting better at that, but appropriate stress is not bad. So like stress that is part of life, we actually get better at that as we manage it. And so appropriate sized bears, the way that we keep it sort of right sized is by greeting it and grappling with it. And so Google Classroom might have been really stressful the first time a kid had to, like my oldest, the first time he had to turn on a camera and talk in front of the whole group, it was as if he was going to have an actual panic attack. Now he's practiced that and he actually enjoys that part, and it's getting better and easier, right? If he had never turned on his camera, for him, the bear might get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we do build healthy stress response systems by tackling manageable stress. So why that's important is because we want to be able to share that with our kids. Like, we're going to do everything we can within our power to keep you safe from the big stuff, right? And to help you deal with uncertainty. But we can do hard things, and we're going to get better at this as we go. And so we want to empathize with their feelings of overwhelm, but also convey confidence that we can do this, and they don't. Connection and structure. So sort of warm, caring, there is not a better antidote to toxic stress. We couldn't concoct a better antidote in a laboratory if we tried than the power of warm and caring relationships with adults, which is why we're so grateful for Seward educators who are just reaching through the screens to connect, because that's going to be the primary way that our kids get to calm. And us too. And then, but how do we make sure that we're helping them handle hard stuff and giving them structure? So it's sort of summed up with this like empathy. This is hard, isn't it? But we will figure this out together, and we're going to build a toolkit together. And so one of the things that I'd love to sort of come out of presentation mode and talk a little bit about, and I have some more tools, practical tools we can share, but I'm curious about questions and additions, is that our job, I love Dr. Lisa Damore's definition of mental health. Mental health does not mean being happy all the time. It doesn't mean having relentlessly optimistic thinking. It's sort of feeling feelings at the right time and then moving through them. And so it's really appropriate for kids to be feeling scared right now. It's a feeling at the right time. It's really appropriate to be feeling angry. It's really appropriate to be feeling uncertain. It's appropriate to be feeling joy, depending on what's happening during the day. And so our job to help them handle stress is not to get rid of the feelings. How do we help them sort of sit with the feeling, name the feelings, and then help them develop a toolkit to move through them, right? So worry is your brain helping you stay safe. Like, our brains worry in order to anticipate what might go wrong. And that's a part of our brain that we're grateful for. But when that worry gets too big, it can get in the way. And so how do we help move through worry so we're not stuck in it? And that kind of warmth and structure, warmth and coaching, is a really tricky balance because we are having feelings too. And so it's not uncommon for us to be in this mode. And so trying to find warmth and structure in our interactions when we are under strain can be really challenging. And so the model that can be really helpful for me, and I'll come out of here and let's talk and chat and take questions and get your ideas, is that when we feel like we're overwhelmed by worry, anxiety, we can talk about the difference between those worry, anxiety, and stress. They're all a little different. But when we feel overwhelmed by that, or our kids do, it's really helpful, as opposed to going straight to problem solving, straight to porcupine. Like, I have this visual in my head. It's like, first I'm going to calm myself down. I'm going to figure out if my kid can calm down. Then I'm going to do what I can to connect, to empathize a little bit. And then once we're calm and our cortex is back online, then we can try to coach some skills. What else could we do when we're feeling mad, except not hit your sibling? What else can we do when we're feeling so worried that our brain is racing, right? So calm, connect, and coach. If we remember nothing else, I sometimes have to go into the kitchen and literally just say those 3 words out loud, like, okay, I need to calm first. Because otherwise I either go into problem solving mode, like I'll just email your teacher, I'll just fix it. Or I go into, I don't have the bandwidth, I want this feeling to go away in you and in me, right? So calm, connect, coach is sort of a brain-based way to help us all move through feelings at any given time. So let me stop. Stop the share so I can see all your faces. And what I think would be really nice, because we have we said about 15 minutes left, and then there's time for other questions or updates, is to hear if there are questions, contributions, people can unmute, observations. What do we as a community need to know or hear that will help us as we think about how do we help our kids cope with stress and ourselves, because us adults have bodies and brains as well. So I'll just leave the space open for a little bit. And I can always, if there aren't any questions, I can always share a few ideas too. Yeah, I love these contributions. Safety, routine, and order. I know consistency is so hard right now. So soothing to the brain, those routines. So hard to keep, but absolutely.
Hey, Erin.
Hey.
The part where there's the connect part, calm, connect, coach. Can you give us some examples of like what the connect part might look like? If it is, because I always go to like, well, I felt that way too sometimes, or like try to, but it's too like self-centered. Like what, just listening and like empathizing. Can you give me some examples of what that looks like?
Yeah, and I think, other folks should, I bet we each have a toolkit, and it's probably specific to our kid. But I think the main thing we want to, in that moment, try to offer is, especially if we're, when I describe their sort of behaviors that don't evoke empathy, is when we start to come, if we're like, okay, I'm kind of calm, but now I'm coming at the coaching with a bit of a like, well, let me tell you how that should have gone. That tends to re-escalate. And so not that we're not going to draw a limit or enforce a consequence. But sometimes it's just that connection can be as simple as like, I'm right here. I know this is really hard. I'm ready to listen when you're ready to talk, right? So it can be even just offering, we've never done this before, and I know that it's really challenging, right? Some of our kids, that connection might be physical. So I have 2 kids that are really different in how they would want to connect, right? One would want space and understanding that I'm there when they're cooled down and ready. So if I try to move in for touch or try to, let's make this like a warm connection time, that might not fly. Another kid, what they want is like collapse in my arms and actually like physically connect. So it might be really different. But I think that the message is to give an empathetic response, and then to let them know that our relationship can handle your big feelings, right? So I'll be ready. I'm here when you're ready to problem solve, or I'm here when, So this is just what's been really helpful for me too, because challenging behaviors, I have repeated to myself You're now just going to get a vision of how I'm living through the pandemic, is like walking into the kitchen and just saying things out loud to myself. But this phrase of like, all feelings are okay, but not all behaviors are okay. And so just because we understand that stress can cause challenging behaviors, this also doesn't mean that all of a sudden our kids' feelings run the house. And oh, I know you're stressed, and so yes, you just destroyed that of your siblings and you're screaming at me, but I understand you're stressed. That's really unpredictable for kids as well. And so that connection bit is just sort of a simple, I don't go away or get angry when you have a big feeling. Right? We can do little kids. Like some kids can say, I need a hug, but other kids are like, I don't have words. Words, that's hard. But sometimes they can tell us what they don't want us to do. Like, do not touch me. Do not tell me how I'm feeling right now, right? So any other ideas from folks? People should, if anybody else out there, I know you all have a million things that you're doing with your kids that are useful. If you have ideas.
Hey, Erin, I just wanted to say thank you, because I think this, like, to hear some of the news from Tammy and Claire in the beginning, I feel like I'm having to like sit and practice the calm piece, because I'm like realize
like a
that,
bear.
yeah, I'm like, I got a million bears, and I think like we forget that even as adults, like we are being asked to model, the coaching, all the way to the coaching part with our kids constantly now. And it's like, no, we kind of have to sit in the calm a lot more, because this is going to be a long haul. So I really appreciate it, because I feel like I'm like actually trying to practice this stuff right now.
Yeah. Nora, I love that you just reminded us of just it's a really intensive, what I just described. So, you may have heard of it as like co-regulation. So we lend calm to kids. That is a huge job for adults. Like this part of our brain, our cortex, is what helps us manage our feelings so that we can access the empathetic room, the cognitive space to help our children calm. And this part of our brain, even though ours is wired, so our kids are already under construction, like stress or not, they're going to have feelings all the time, because that part of their brain is still growing. Ours is wired, but so tired. And it is it's not an infinite resource. Like there is a reason that our impulse control flies out the window, even on a good day at night, because it's just tired. And so Nora, just bringing up that this is an it's a very high demand executive function environment for adults. Let's just say that it's exhausting. And so you might start the day with like a calm, connect coach. And then by noon, you're like, get out of my face. That's because this is an exhausting time. And so if we're not taking care of our bodies and our brains, it's going to be really difficult for us to lend that to our kids. And sometimes we forget, we talk about kids and stress and we're like, oh, there are other bodies and brains in the room called adults and educators, or parents and educators. And we're going through a big, big thing right now. So body-based, any practices we have in our toolkit to recharge this part of our brain, now is the time. Yeah, Meg, the E1 health lesson on mindfulness was so timely. I know I was really benefiting from that as well today. I was like, Jody, just talk to me. Yeah, so those are the kinds of things. So how do we recharge that part of the brain? There's in the moment tools. Hot tools are things when we're about to fly off the handle, right? That's like, okay, I'm about to yell. And so I'm going to give myself a hand massage. I'm going to breathe in 3 times, hold it, and breathe out 3 times. I'm going to stick my head out the window into some cold air. Like that is how do I keep myself from actually flipping my cortex and going into hot reactor mode. So that's like a tool for like hot executive or hot impulse control. But then there's sort of the cool, which is just all the maintenance work that we need to be doing. So there are ways to recharge this part of our brain that you probably are, this is not news to us, but it's things like exercise and sleep and nutrition and body-based practices or cultural practices that sort of allow us to look inside of ourselves. So those things right now are hard to prioritize, but they're what recharges this part of the brain. And I agree, Nora, it's like we're having to do a lot of our own breathing and getting back to calm. Any other observations or thoughts or just contributions? I mean, this is like a workshop, but it's also our community. You know, we need to be here for each other, and whether it's in the context of a roundtable or other ways that we're connecting with each other. There's the academic side and the system side, and then there's all of us trying to figure out how do we support each other as we're supporting our kids. So if you have any questions.
I just wanted to support just the idea of, I have older kids, high school and college, and just this whole thing of not pretending that this isn't loss for them, because for us and for our kids, there's loss, and it's things that there can be gain too, but the loss is pretty big, and just to be honest and not try to diminish that, because I think it feels crappy when someone tells you it's not a big deal when you know it is.
Yeah. Thanks. Especially because this, if you've heard the term ambiguous loss, like sometimes it's hard for kids to point at what's happening. Like for some kids, there's a thing, like I missed my graduation or somebody's sick in my house, but for other
Oh, okay. It's like, well, Charlotte here, who is in kindergarten, she just had some days where she really wants to come to the school and be with her friends, and then she has some days where she doesn't want to be on the computer at all. So I would say doing this distant learning thing, it took me a while to, be natural and, get her interactive with her classes and stuff. It's like some of the work's piling up. But, that's on Fridays, we try to take it step by step. So, I never knew kindergarten would be so hard because, as a kindergartner, I don't remember doing this much. So some of her work to us, it's just, it gets confusing. So, we try to take our time. So I've learned one major thing also. I appreciate the teachers way more now, because now I know what they go through, because me trying to be a teacher and a parent, it's like that switch. I don't know whether to get mad or whether to stay calm, but it takes a lot of patience with us.
Oh my gosh, does it ever? I think, I don't know if you can see, Vincent, every single person that has their camera on is like nodding so much that their heads are like bobbing across the screen that, teachers are doing a heavy lift. We are doing a heavy lift. Like we are all, and it sounds like you are striking that beautiful balance of, this is hard. We don't really know what we're doing. This is new, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to try to get better as we go. And we're going to kind of communicate when it gets to be too much. Like that's the other thing, is it's when we notice it's too much, we got to reach out to the teachers, we got to reach out to our community and say it's not working anymore. Like it's coming at a cost to our mental health. And now we have to problem solve something else.
Yeah, exactly. I've luckily worked a flexible job as a market coordinator for my job, but it's like, I'm trying to balance work, I'm trying to balance her school, The one thing I try to do mainly is at least make sure she sees all 3 of her classes. She misses some specialist classes on some days, but I at least make sure she's there for the morning and the evening class or the closing
Beautiful.
class.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the lessons, and anyone else can offer their thoughts too, but it's just figuring out how do we team together? How do we know that there's a lot of noise? And so our first attempts to team, sometimes it's like we didn't quite work it out. So we gotta like go back. Like, no, this is really coming at a cost. I think one of the things that can be challenging is trying to figure out what is appropriate stress that we can say, you know, you can do this, we can do hard things, and what sort of starts to get in the way of what we know kids need. Right. So when that sort of, this isn't worth the meltdown, the constant meltdowns or the sadness, or, you know, so we got to track kind of clusters of symptoms and work together. And that's why it's really great. I mean, we didn't really talk about what happens if we tip into mental health concerns, like beyond where we need extra support. So I do think it's useful to just know that we do have, you know, Sarah and Kaisa and the admin team and folks that we can reach out to if our kids feel like they need, when we talk about mental health, it's having feelings at the right time, right? So that having feelings of sadness, right, carry and loss is a feeling at the right time. Let's not rob them of that emotional response. Rage about, you know, what's happening, totally appropriate. So, but when they get stuck there and we start to see like consistent headaches and stomach aches, consistent sleeplessness, when worry turns into anxiety, which is body and brain is overwhelmed, right? So that's when we want to make sure that we're not doing this alone and normalizing it's okay to not be okay, and reaching out to our mental health providers, pediatricians, Sarah and Kaisa, like get the team. And that they can also help us figure out like, oh, I think they can cope, but here's a few extra strategies. So it's not that we have to catastrophize right away, but I do think we also don't want to be isolated as we try to look at patterns over time. Like, oh, this is like this, these stomach aches are not going away. This is kind of, they're not moving through their feelings, right? So I want to make sure that we as a community know that we want to normalize mental health support too, for us too, us grownups. We need it. So I know that I think I've gone now a couple minutes over time because there was going to be maybe a couple updates at the end. I hope that this was useful. I feel really grateful to be able to have the opportunity to talk about this in a community that I belong to. So please, you know, feel free to reach out just as a fellow Seward parent. Not that I have all the answers, but I think the more that we reach out to each other, it can be useful to not feel like, well, am I the only one who's having some of these challenges? And we're not. And so we need to make sure that resilience, we always talk about the science of resilience, is resilience is not something we go into our homes and we get grittier. Like, that is, no evidence backs that up. Resilience is distributed in relationships. So even though we are in front of our computers alone, we gotta reach out to each other. And professionally, you're welcome to at sparkandstitchinstitute.com, which is my professional hat. We do work on translating this kind of stuff for parents and do a lot of work on screen time. So come visit me in that shop as well. But thanks everybody, so good to see your faces, and I'll hand it back to any of the other folks. I think, were there some announcements still, Christian, or?
I think we
oh, maybe we switched
said
it.
what
Did
we
you already,
needed to
you already did your
say
PTO?
at the beginning.
Yeah.
We did it. So, I mean,
well, we can stick around. We can go.
Right, Tammy. I don't know if you have anything else that you wanna touch base on. Otherwise, it's great that everybody could join us tonight. This is these monthly roundtables. They'll continue to be we're the second Thursday at 6:30 p.m. and it's the same Zoom meeting link for everyone. And yeah, if you just whether it's to come and see people from around the neighborhood or to learn a little bit more about what's going on with the school, I welcome you all to keep joining us over these next however many months. So.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, and thank you, Erin. This was so timely, and I hope everybody takes this to heart. You have to take care of yourselves and to take care of the kids, and we have to be models for them, right? And it's hard some days. I get it. When I love that saying about, what did you say? Our brains are wired and tired. That is true. So, and I appreciate you just saying, acknowledge these feelings and then let's work through them. And you gave us some strategies. So thank you, Erin. And then just, yeah, lastly, I hear what you're saying, Christian, like this is our new normal about getting together, right? And I actually, look forward to it. Like in all these little squares, like Hollywood squares, like that's really old fashioned and dates me, but, and then Mr. Greer and all of you, I want you to know that we as a staff take it very seriously and also to heart that we are now in your living rooms and kitchens every day for teaching and learning. And it's an honor. I want to just say that to you. We do not take it for granted. And again, we just appreciate all of your efforts. I mean, this kind of teaching and learning is absolutely a pure partnership. Like if you had to look that up, this is what it looks like. So I just want to, just thank you for that again. All right, anything else?
I have a question. I don't know if there are usually minutes, or I just looked on the calendar and it looks like the December roundtable is the first night of Hanukkah, so that might be a conflict for some folks. And are there is there a way to stay caught up if you can't make the meeting?
Yeah, we usually don't take minutes, but we can adjust the meeting date. That wouldn't be a problem. It's early enough. We can do that. We worked around, Jim, good point. These are being recorded. Mm-hmm. That's true. But let's talk about that, because we try really hard to avoid having meetings on holidays for our parents and our learning community. Okay.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
I'm also happy to send out, if anybody wants the slides that weren't that detailed, but I'm happy to send out some follow-up resources. Maybe I could throw them on the PTA page or something if anybody wants to follow up.
Erin, yeah, please do that.
Great.
All right.
I want to just add to everyone, people may have received either a phone call or a text about school materials that your child left last year when we closed down, without any warning. So if you got a call or a text, or you are sure you never got any of their, books, artwork, maybe some shoes, maybe a coat, we are going to be, Mary or I will be at school the next 3 Mondays, 7:30 to 10 a.m. And we will go and look for the bags of materials for people. So you should have gotten a call or a text if you have something, but we may have missed you also. So if you feel confident that you have something, come on in one of those days and we'll look for you. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Be well, stay safe.